What would you think if I told you that it's not her beauty that makes him spiral into obsession? Not her body, not her voice, not even her presence. It's the way she moves without needing to be seen. It's the way she doesn't reach, doesn't chase, doesn't try to convince. It's the way she simply is whole, magnetic, complete, and doesn't need his gaze to know she exists. Carl Jung might call it the activated anima, the unconscious feminine projection that stirs a man not with pleasure, but with disruption. A woman like this does not enter his life to flatter his ego. She enters to awaken it. And in doing so, she touches a place inside him that no surface-level romance ever reached. The ancient ache for wholeness, for fusion with the forgotten part of himself. She doesn't seduce with tactics. She seduces with being. The first thing she does is disarm him, not with flirtation, but with stillness. The way she doesn't fill the air with explanation. The way her silence is not empty, but intentional. Most men are used to women who give too much, too fast, who spill their need in the hopes of being held. But she is rooted. She gives slowly. She lets him wonder. And that wonder becomes obsession. Because the masculine chases mystery when it's met with clarity. And she carries both. She speaks when there's meaning, not to fill space. And when she doesn't respond the way he's used to, with overgiving or apology or overaccommodation, his control begins to fracture. He tries harder, reaches deeper, because she has activated something he cannot name but cannot ignore. This is the first spiral, the craving for her presence, not her validation. He thinks it's about her, but it's not. It's about the part of himself he suddenly feels when she's near, alive, raw, unguarded. And yet, she never asks him to feel that way. She simply holds her own energy so fully, it forces him to confront his own emptiness. The second spiral comes from how she leaves things unsaid. She doesn't reveal everything at once, not because she's playing games, but because she values intimacy too much to rush it. She understands that real closeness is not in confession, but in resonance. And she doesn't need to be understood immediately. She is patient with her mystery. She wears her history like perfume, faint, sacred, and not for everyone. And so he leans in, not because she is withholding, but because she is whole. She doesn't offer fragments. She offers presence. And her presence doesn't beg to be chosen. It chooses. Jung would tell us that the feminine, when embodied, is not chaotic. She is alchemical. She holds the power to melt structures without force, to unravel defense with softness. And in her subtle distance, in her refusal to overexpose, she becomes unforgettable. She doesn't demand attention. She pulls it, not with performance, but with poise. And that is what terrifies him, because her existence challenges everything he thought love required: performance, effort, pursuit. But she doesn't make him work. She makes him wonder. And in that wondering, he loses the part of himself that always needed control. The third spiral comes when she shows him he cannot own her. Not through anger, not through defiance, through freedom. She is unattached, not cold, not avoidant, but sovereign. Her happiness doesn't hinge on his affection. Her identity is not built on his attention. She can love and let go. She can connect without clinging. And when she walks, she doesn't threaten to leave. She leaves with grace. And this, above all, is what makes her unforgettable. She was never his to keep, because she was never trying to be kept. She offered a mirror, and when he failed to see himself in it, not the projection, but the truth, she didn't shatter the reflection. She simply stepped away. And now he spirals, not because she hurt him, but because she didn't need to, because she gave him everything, a glimpse of what love looks like when it is not born of fear, but of fullness. And once a man sees that, he cannot unsee it. There's a point in every man's life when he meets the woman he cannot forget, not because of what she gave him, but because of what she didn't. She didn't beg. She didn't explain. She didn't try to prove that her love was worth staying for. She let him choose. And when he chose distance, she didn't resist. She let him drift. She made no scene. She offered no emotional ransom. She simply became a silence he would never escape. Because obsession doesn't begin with drama, it begins with absence. The kind of absence that speaks, that echoes, that pierces the man who once thought he could walk away untouched. Carl Jung understood this through the anima, the feminine presence within a man's psyche that, when triggered externally by a woman of rare embodiment, pulls him in a longing not for her body, but for completion. Completion of his own inner fracture. And when she walks, when she removes herself from his field, he begins to spiral not toward her, but toward himself. But what shakes him, what he cannot understand, is that she never chased. She never tried to reopen the door. She never returned to soften the blow. And so the third spiral deepens. He realizes she was not addicted to him. She was aligned with herself. And that realization, for a man still ruled by ego, is unbearable. You see, the average man isn't used to feminine detachment. He's used to feminine devotion, to being needed, worshipped, clung to. He's used to love that compromises, love that waits. But when he meets a woman who needs nothing, who offers presence without dependence, affection without sacrifice, he doesn't know what to do with it. At first, he feels powerful. He believes he has the upper hand, that she'll circle back, that all women do. But she doesn't. She disappears, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Not because she wants to punish, but because she refuses to perform for love. Because her absence is not a tactic, it's a boundary. And suddenly, everything he believed about love begins to unravel. He starts to question the power he thought he had. He remembers the way she looked at him, with reverence, yes, but also with discernment. She didn't worship his potential. She waited for the man underneath his posturing to arrive. And when he didn't, she didn't wait longer. She walked, and in that moment, something ancient within him begins to ache. Not for her touch, for her presence. The way she could hold space without speaking. The way her silence made noise. The way she was unmoved by games, unshaken by delay, unbothered by the tactics he'd used so effortlessly before. Because she was not trying to win him. She was trying to feel him. And now that she's gone, he's left with the mirror she once held, and the reflection he refused to see. You, who listen now, if you've ever been this woman, you must understand what your detachment did. It shattered his illusion. It disrupted the cycle. It showed him, not with anger but with absence, that not all love tolerates delay. That not all women perform for validation. That some women choose themselves, even when it hurts. And that choice is unforgettable. It is why he obsesses. Not because you screamed, or wept, or begged, but because you didn't. Because you left with your power intact. Because you never needed him to understand you in order to honor yourself. He cannot stop thinking about that. He will search for you in others, in hurried glances and half-held conversations. He will seek your energy in lovers who mimic your movements but not your depth. He will chase the feeling you gave him, the rare safety of being seen and still held accountable. But he will not find it, because you are not a moment. You are a mirror, and you broke the spell. You didn't stay to fix him. You stepped back so he could face himself, and he will spiral, not toward you, but toward the truth you revealed. There is a difference between a woman who loves from her wounds and a woman who loves from her wholeness. He didn't know the difference until she left. She did not offer love as a transaction. She didn't dangle affection for compliance, nor did she use desire to secure safety. Her love was quiet, sovereign, sacred. And because he had only ever known love as a form of need, as emotional currency, as something to be bargained or controlled, he mistook her stillness for distance, her patience for indifference, her dignity for detachment. He expected her to crumble, to wait, to return with softer boundaries. But she never did, and so the spiral continues. Not because he is evil, but because he is unevolved. Because no one taught him that to meet a powerful feminine presence requires the death of the false self. And Jung knew, all true love initiates a death, of ego, of illusion, of the identity we use to survive instead of connect. But he wasn't ready to die, so he ran. And now, the haunting begins. She becomes the sound between thoughts, The feeling that rushes in when the room grows quiet. The glance he avoids in the mirror because he knows it will remind him of who he refused to become when he had the chance. Not for her, but for himself. You must understand, she didn't make him spiral by punishing him. She made him spiral by not saving him, by not softening her truth to protect his fragility, by not becoming less just so he could feel more. That is the kind of woman who activates the anima in its purest, most disruptive form. The inner feminine that does not coddle but confronts. The inner feminine who says, I see you, but I will not carry what you refuse to hold. And so she left, not in anger, but in alignment. And her alignment echoes. It follows him into the shallows where he once swam comfortably. Where he'll laugh, he'll date, he'll drink, he'll say she was too much, too mysterious, too distant. But in quiet moments, when no one is around to lie to, he will remember the way she made him feel like a man without ever needing to shrink into a girl. Because she was never little. She was vast. She was the storm and the sea, the silence and the symphony. She was the ache and the antidote. And he let her go because he didn't understand that love this deep is not easy. It is earned. And he didn't earn her. Not because he wasn't enough, but because he wasn't ready. She saw the emperor in him, but he was still playing the fool. So she bowed one final time and walked away. And now she lives as both memory and myth. The one who held him in his truth without judgment, but would not stay to mother the man who refused to grow. And he spirals, not because she broke his heart, but because she awakened it. And once it's been awakened by a woman like her, no other sleep will ever feel like peace again. And so his world moves on, but he does not. On the outside, everything appears the same. He laughs at the right moments, responds with charm, maintains his rhythm of detachment. But inside, something sacred has shifted. Something is hollowed out of space where her energy once lingered, where her gaze once softened the jagged corners of his unhealed wounds. It wasn't what she said that broke him open. It was what she was. She embodied the feminine not as a performance, but as a state of being. She wasn't selling a fantasy. She wasn't proving her value. She simply stood, radiant, full, untamed, and allowed him to meet her there. Or not. And that is why he cannot forget her. Because she didn't bend. Because she didn't beg. Because she didn't barter her truth for his company. She loved with presence and left with peace. And that haunts the kind of man who has only ever known love as something to conquer. Jung would call this the confrontation with the self, the moment where the ego, confronted with the soul, begins to fracture. The spiral isn't about her body. It's not even about the relationship. It's about what she mirrored, a version of him he almost became, and a path he chose not to walk. And now he stands at the threshold she once waited beside, alone. She won't return. Not because she hates him, not because she hasn't forgiven, but because her love isn't a revolving door. It is a temple, and entry was always about readiness, not worth. He may still see her in passing, a name on a screen, a photo in a shared friend's feed, a memory triggered by a song that once played as she smiled. And in that flicker of recognition, he will feel it again, the weight of what was possible and the silence that followed when he hesitated. Because she wasn't asking him to be perfect. She was asking him to be present. And he chose the former, a polished image over a real connection, control over surrender, habit over transformation. But she did not grieve forever. She alchemized the loss. She turned the ache into art, the silence into stillness, the abandonment into alignment. And now she moves differently. She speaks slowly. She gives intentionally. And she no longer explains the softness of her boundaries or the sharpness of her knowing. She simply is. And the men who meet her now feel the weight of her evolution. Not because she's hard, but because she's clear. Her energy does not beg to be understood. It invites alignment. And if it's not met, she doesn't flinch. She simply continues. And you, if you've ever been her, you must know